Hello and welcome to Portsmouth This Week. My name is Conley Zani and I'm your host. This show is under the auspices of Rich Rayner, our Portsmouth Town Administrator. Together, Rich, myself, and the entire Portsmouth This Week team are on a mission to build community. We do that by bringing you accurate and timely information about the issues that impact you. We introduce you to leaders, faces, personalities that make up the fabric of this very magical place that we live. This week, my guests are Cynthia Koniecki and Helen Mathieu. They are representatives of the Portsmouth Multipurpose Senior Center. And as many of you know, there are loads of yes and no signs out there on the streets, and we're trying to clear up some confusion. So, welcome, ladies. I really, from the bottom of my heart, appreciate you being here. Every time I open Facebook or even drive down East Main Road, my blood pressure kind of goes up because there is so much misinformation out there. And I thought, who better to have on the show than the two of you? You have loads of experience. Cindy, I know you have been the director of the Portsmouth Multipurpose Senior Center for 20 plus years. Right. And Helen, you are the chairwoman of the board. Yes. And for the last 4 years, prior to that, finance, and I think you said maybe it was the 80s that you joined as a member.
I think when my mother was a member before me,
yeah.
And I'm sure when I reached age 55, I'm sure that's when I first signed on.
Yeah, and your mom was one of the first people to go to the town
yes.
and say, we need a place for our seniors.
Right.
Right.
They
I
went
love
to,
that.
Yes.
Yeah, that is really cool. So listen, we don't have much time to clear up all of the confusion, so we're going to do our best. What I thought we'd do is kind of cover some reasons. I know that the leadership of the Senior Center is on board with moving forward with Church Community Housing Corporation and that master plan. Yes. So let's just start with why vote yes? Okay, so can I just kind of put it out there? When you all think about it, what rises to the top for you? Why the yes?
Well, in my view, I think that the master plan that they have come up with is the most realistic solution to our current problem. And it also has a timeline that I believe is doable and workable. And so I have to admit, Cindy and I were asked to be on the advisory committee because, obviously because of our positions, and we were the idea of somehow changing where we were or how we operated was something at our age, my age I should say, and not speak for Cindy, that you don't like, change.
So you were a little skeptical. You went in
right.
skeptical.
We both were.
And now you're believers?
Absolutely, right.
And no, I didn't want to believe that.
All right.
Well, I mean, our thought was that, okay, so they're just, sending us off to another organization to solve our problem, and we're not sure that this is a good match. However, we certainly knew that it was a plan that the council was pursuing, and we wanted to be a part of it because if that's the plan that came through, then obviously that was going to affect us. In the beginning, well, when it came to, we asked all sorts of questions, down to square footage of every room, the number of parking spaces needs to be the same as what we have, plus more, because you're going to have residents there.
Right.
Everything.
Yeah.
But I'll have to say that through the whole process, Mr. Belden and the architects that he was working with, they listened to every one of our concerns and they addressed them and solved our problem. We had difficulty, and I think some of our members still do. How are you going to have seniors, a common area that the senior residents have right to be in, and then a separate area that's called like a condo area, which also caused confusion, a condo area that would be just for us, which is the thrift shop and our offices and so forth. But Mr. Belden came up with the idea that we would have a contract with the housing development. When it's all built, you have a housing group that's going to manage the facility, the structure, so forth. the building maintenance and so forth, but we would have the ability to program
Yes.
the common area.
You guys get to
Right.
run it all.
Yes,
We're running the whole thing.
yes.
Right. That's important. I think that's
Absolutely.
important because as I scan through the themes out there, the pushback, a lot of people think we're giving up control, but you guys are actually
Right.
retaining
Well,
control.
that was our concern, but,
We're not changing anything.
right,
Yeah.
so it is different, absolutely, but it is doable, absolutely doable. And I know Cindy's experience and our staff and the volunteers can do this, and I believe the residents are going to be delighted to have us on site. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if it wouldn't be a model for a lot of other communities, because having people on site living there, we have live-in volunteers. They don't have to get in their car and come to the senior center. I believe that those residents are going to be very happy with what we have in our programs, and also that our own members are going to benefit by all of this.
Yeah.
And I know that Cindy, in the end, when we were planning the real details of what was going to be in the senior center dedicated space and what was going to be in the space for community space, that Cindy was on the phone directly with the architect going over the details of that placement, the square footage, to make sure that it was, that it met our needs.
And you have run this center and others for years. This is what you do.
Right.
I ran
So
this
you
one
knew
for-
what space
For
is.
20 years, and I worked at the Tiverton Senior Center for
Yeah.
5 years, so that's, 25 years.
Yeah.
under my
And
belt.
been involved with seniors in other areas as
Yeah,
well.
in geriatric pharmacy, 2 years.
So Cindy, I see that you brought actually a little bit of
Yes.
the floor plan of this space that we're talking about right here. So if we can shift to this graphic, I notice there are two different colors, and I understand that that represents some of the space that is typically related with senior housing.
Right.
And these are
Right.
multi-purpose rooms that might include a library and some congregating rooms. And then at the top there are the places that what you're referring to as the condo, that confusing word is the condo, but those are your offices, the thrift shop, a fitness
Right.
center, the kitchen. And this is what you've been working so hard on with the architects to make sure that this is all right. But again, you are managing it all.
Right.
Right? So tell us about this.
Before this was even there, we had just an empty space here, and I had like little stickies, and I would put down like what we have now, and I'd put them on here and then rearrange it. No, I don't want that, I don't want that. And then when I brought it together, they tweaked it, and this is what they came up with. So right in the yellow area is our condo, and the darker yellow, or you want to call it golden, is the shared space. So we have a dining room, the multi-purpose room, which all these rooms can be multi-purpose room. This is the library. This is the game room where there'll be cards here. There's going to be a pool table.
I see reception.
And this is a reception area, and there might be another reception here. I also have an office down here for our senior health insurance program consultant. So she'll be there 3 days a week taking care of Medicare, which
Yep.
would be an advantage to the seniors that are, if they do have affordable senior housing. And then, so they will have access to this. And they're allowed to come in our office, or they're allowed to use the fitness center, but nobody can go into the fitness center without being trained first, properly trained, because of liability reasons. So that's one reason. And this is going to be hours, because after hours, if they go in there and they fall, there's nobody there to watch them.
Right.
And that's a big liability for the
So
management
you've
company.
been very strategic about what pieces are kind of in the condo, the part that is
Right.
very specific to your needs, and what pieces are associated with the senior housing. But we're hoping all of these people that live in the new residences will become members of the senior center.
Yeah, absolutely. And plus, it'll increase our meal site. And that's open to anybody 60 and over,
Right.
because it will be run by EPCAP. And we have a catered license for that. I have food manager's license for the kitchen, so that will be ours. So they would not be able to go in there after hours. If they want to go or have some kind of function after hours, then they have to book it through me, because I will be managing all this, all
Right.
through here. And the property management will be running the
They're taking care of the building.
of the senior housing.
Yes, yes.
Another advantage for
And
us,
all we have to do is take care of the utilities and the housekeeping. And so there's no expense to the town. They're not going to do any maintenance here unless my bulb runs out or something, they'll go put a bulb in for me. But other than that, it's going to be very low maintenance.
and a low cost to the senior center, because right now we have the expenses of the utilities for the entire building, 8,000 square feet. In this plan, first it'll be brand-new
Right.
utilities, and we'll only have the electric and heat for, say,
this area. Which
like
is
one-third.
2,300 square feet.
Right.
Well, I think this is very well thought out, and a lot of work has gone into, like thoughtful work has gone into where things go, and who's got the license for the kitchen and who's
Right.
running the fitness center and all of that. And I think this feels really good, and I think what feels the best to someone like myself is that you all still have control over the whole space.
Yep.
So a resident can't come in and be like, well, I'm using this corner. No.
No.
Without that piece, quite honestly,
You wouldn't have gone forward.
we wouldn't have agreed
Right.
to the program.
Right.
But with that, it really makes sense. And somebody needs to be. Many of the senior housing, they do have the space, but unless the residents form an association and then they meet and make plans, and this group, I'm sure, will do the same thing. They could have their meetings and decide that some activities they wanted for resident only, and we would help them and support them in that. They wanted to plan a special potluck dinner, say, once a month on Wednesday nights. I'm sure our volunteers would be happy
Right.
to
Some more
cooperate.
community.
Yes,
Or
right.
bingo, or
Yeah.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
could have their
It's an
own
opportunity.
housing
Right.
management,
So
too.
you retain control.
yes, I do.
And then you said you like the timeline, and one of the cool things is, under this plan, moving forward with CCHC, you guys can stay right where you
Absolutely.
are
We're not-
until it's move-in day.
Absolutely.
Right? And
Until
literally-
until this is completed, then we move in.
Yeah, so you're not displaced.
Nope.
Right.
So that's another great reason. Then we've got the housing that's attached to it, and I love what you said, Helen. Just, this is a sort of unique, cool model to have a senior center as part of this housing development, and we need affordable
Yes,
housing.
senior housing,
And it's senior
Senior,
housing.
55
Now,
and above.
I have heard a lot of Facebook protests that, oh, well, Portsmouth residents won't get priority. But I do want to clarify, when I spoke with Christian Belden, he said, it turns out that at every housing development that he's done, the people that are in there are people that kind of live in that area. It's just, that's the way it ends up. Portsmouth people will apply, and
Right.
I guess someone from Providence could apply and get in the mix, but
But that's rare, though. It's going to be somewhere
it's
local.
rare.
But also the reason that it is open to, it's like any federal program or state program, some of the money that will be requested and received would be housing, affordable housing money, possibly from the state, possibly federal government or whatever, and so those programs say you cannot discriminate.
Yes, we have to be
As
right.
our Portsmouth Senior Center and all the senior centers in Rhode Island, while we call it the Portsmouth Senior Center, we have members from anywhere who want to join, because we take state money, and so we're very happy. People in the surrounding areas, I'm a member, I live in Newport, but I'm a member of Portsmouth. People in
Right.
Portsmouth are members of Middletown.
Right.
So that's the reason
So
that you have to
that's not a reason
open
to
it.
not go forward.
Yeah.
We need senior housing.
Absolutely.
We need senior housing.
We need it in this town, and we need it in this state.
Yes, yes,
And there's a waiting list. It takes sometimes 3 to 5 years just to get into senior housing.
And here's the other thing. This is not going to cost Portsmouth taxpayers anything. This is going to be funded through our partnership with CCHC. They're going to be able to use their expertise. I know Christian has such expertise in.
Yes, over 50 years CCH has in developing affordable housing. And one other point I want to make, in the beginning, I think he mentioned that this condo area, if you figure out square footage, that it might cost around $600,000 for that.
To build out that
Yeah,
piece.
for that piece. And clearly, when you have funding for senior housing and the bankers get involved and the investors and so forth, there's tax credits. It's a very complicated procedure. But once they get all that housing funding, there are rules and regulations, and one of them would be that they're not going, they'll pay for a library, a community room, all these other rooms that are in the gold color, but they're not going to pay for a 501 separate C3
Yeah.
to put there. So
Yeah, they're not going to pay for your office.
Right.
We have to
No,
pay for
they're
your
not going to be
office.
paying
Right.
for this,
And-
and they
right.
came up with a figure, $600,000, which will be paid by the community development
Yeah,
block
the
grant.
plan is to go for
That's not gonna
community
cost
block
the center anything.
grant. And I imagine the town of Portsmouth would have to apply as well with church community.
Of course.
But I'm
out there.
confident that
Yeah.
with the expertise and the experience of church community, they have done this before and they know how to do it.
Yes.
I don't know any other developer that could do it.
And then while we're talking dollars, the other great thing is this new housing development will now bring in property tax revenue,
Right,
Yes.
right, to Portsmouth.
yes.
And currently, we don't get any property tax revenue from the Ann Hutchinson building, right?
No.
Like, so that's another positive also, right?
Absolutely.
And another thing going with the Ann Hutchinson, they're not going to knock down that building. You know, they'll knock down the building that we're in now because
The one story.
Yeah, it's kind of deplorable, the one-story one, but the four-room schoolhouse is going to remain there.
Yeah.
And somehow they'll be
And the ball
generating
field is
revenue
also
from
going to
there.
remain
And
there.
the
It will
ball
be moved,
field.
but it'll remain there.
Yeah, we got to move it, but it's going to be there.
Yes, it is.
And everybody's going to have all the access that they
Right.
currently
And the
have.
decisions on the Ann Hutchinson School will come, I think, after this
After.
project.
Yep.
And the question on the ballot says, and the possible development of the Ann Hutchinson School. Right now, church community is suggesting market rate condos, and those, of course, would also bring in tax revenue. But at that point, I think the town council, if it's not feasible, then they'll come up with a different plan for Ann Hutchinson. So that's not set in stone, and a lot of people are saying, well, I don't know if it was Mr. Rayner or someone said it's not set in stone. It's not set in stone because that planning for the Ann Hutchinson School hasn't gotten to the point that this planning has. It's already up to the point of getting banking,
Yep.
funding for it, and proceeding. The Ann
Yeah.
Hutchinson School would be a second project, and it would go through the same, and there would be public hearings and so forth on that.
Everyone will get to weigh in.
Right.
Yes.
All right, so listen, I want to recap here on the yes, because you all are pretty
Right.
passionate.
I'm very
all right?
passionate, yes,
So
we
I'm
are.
hearing, all right, there's no interruption to your operations.
Right. Correct.
That's a huge deal
Absolutely.
for you guys.
Yep.
You guys retain control over all of the space.
True.
Yes.
We've got affordable senior housing.
Yes.
That is
Right.
a blessing.
And we're being a model possibly for communities in the future to emulate. There are no Portsmouth tax dollars going to any of this. This will cost the Portsmouth
correct.
taxpayers nothing.
Nothing.
And we're actually going to be getting tax revenue.
And you'll
That's
get- you'll generate.
huge. This is huge. Now, there is a lot of confusion out there, right? Clearly. There's a lot of misinformation, I'd say especially on Facebook. And there's so much misinformation and so much confusion that I have a lot of friends that are like, well, listen, I'm just going to vote no because I'm so confused, right? Like I understand
And
that,
that's what we
right?
hear, too.
I understand that. So I want to talk really quickly about there are consequences to voting no, though.
Absolutely.
Right? So voting no, I mean, we're certainly kicking the can down the road, but in your words, what is the biggest, what does voting no mean? Like, what are you concerned about if we vote no? Helen, I don't want to say I'm not going to pick on you, but like you were so articulate when we were talking about,
Well,
this is what you led with, which was
yeah,
like,
I mean-
I'm very worried about
Absolutely.
about the viability of the current 501c3 that is the
Right.
Portsmouth
You know,
multipurpose.
we're not going to be able to stay there. If they vote no, eventually they're going to close that place because it's,
Why?
because of the conditions that are in there. We have electrical problems, we have roof problems, we have, starting with mold and mildew. I've already had that cleaned twice with the mold and mildew. And it's not a healthy environment. And the floors are starting to warp.
Yeah.
And I got holes in the foundation.
So you cannot stay where you are long-term.
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 Long-term. You feel like you can make it, if we move forward with CCHC,
We can stay there
You
for the next
can
3-5
make
years.
it.
Yes.
We're at this point with church community, and by voting yes, the town is able to enter into an agreement with them for this project. But if they vote no, then we're back to square one. They're going to have to start with, then what do you do? If you don't like this plan,
Which
which we think is a great plan,
win-win situation.
what plan are you going to come up with, and how long is it going to take the town or the citizens to come up with another plan to solve our problem? We have a problem now, and as
and
Cindy
you might not survive
and this-
another iteration.
well, I mean, how long can we wait for that solution? And as Cindy pointed out, if something, a major rainstorm or snowstorm causes the leaking roof to really, cause a lot of damage, the town is not going to have a choice but to say, at some point, that you have to move
Right.
because it's not safe for seniors. Now, at that point, I would have to go and look for a place to rent, and I will
And you're
check-
already looking. I
And
know
I
you've
did.
been looking.
Right.
And functionally and financially, it's not working, though. Like the solutions that have
Right.
come across your radar.
This is a solution that is workable.
Yeah.
And to vote, and for anyone to say that they're voting no because they want to support the seniors to stay in the building.
That's not going to happen.
That building's that's deteriorating.
That is years away.
Yeah. Yeah.
And certainly,
So you're not saving the senior center by voting no.
Absolutely, you are not. I just, from my heart, I say you are not saving
Yeah.
the senior center by voting
You save
no.
the senior center by
Right.
voting yes on this project.
Right. Yes, so again, all of that Facebook misinformation, all the crazy, I shouldn't say crazy ideas, but people are trying to problem solve and, oh, we should go there and go over here to Coggeshall and whatever. Like, we've looked at these things.
Right.
This is the win-win.
Right.
From your perspective, this is the win-win going forward. Now, also confusing, just to add another thing, is the wording on the ballot itself, right? And my understanding is the wording on the ballot has a lot to do with our town charter. Can
Right.
one of you explain that to me?
Yes.
Helen.
The town charter on section 912, which has to do with transfer of property.
Yeah.
And people ask about the word transfer. Going back many years, I served on one and I think possibly two of the charter review committees, which the town is required every so many years to look at the town charter and see if they need any updates, sometimes to adhere to new state laws, federal laws, et cetera, or do you just want changes? And that's been done, in the past. One of the items in this section on transfer states that the town cannot transfer any property in town that is greater than 2 acres or give a lease to any entity for longer than 10 years. Now, both of the Ann Hutchinson site meets that requirement. It is over 2 acres,
Right.
and they want a lease, obviously,
So
for
that's why
for
we're
longer than 10.
voting.
That's why
Yes.
we're there, because the town cannot enter into this lease that church community needs unless they go to the voters. That's what's spelled out in 912. They must go to the voters for permission to do this.
So then the language, though, is
So the language transfer is based on that
vague.
language. And also, you make a question general because you don't want to be specific. Basically, you're just saying, give us permission to do the transfer. It's not saying to church community, maybe tomorrow church community changes their name slightly or whatever. It's giving them permission to
start this process.
to start this process. And
Right.
so that's why it doesn't say lease, it doesn't say how many, it doesn't
So we need
say-
to focus
it
on
doesn't
what's
say
in
all
it.
the things
Yes.
that people are saying. However, they're concerned about, they say it, we'll vote yes, and then there'll be a bait and switch. Believe me, I wouldn't support this if I thought that we were not protected. That question, it's not so much what isn't in the question, it's what is in the question. And what's in the question is the language that says very specifically that the voters are voting to approve, allowing the town council to enter into an agreement that is longer than 10 years and over 2 acres, but more importantly, for the purpose of building senior housing and a senior center. Those 2 elements are in that question. So, if the voters vote for that question, and church community tomorrow says, well, I look for funding and I can't find it, but I really could do something else to that property.
They can't do that.
I could put, they can't do that.
Yeah, the town council can't enter
And the
into
town
it.
council
Yes,
can't do it
right,
either.
right.
That, in my experience, that is the guarantee that I believe we have. That is the guarantee that the voters have. It cannot happen unless senior housing and senior center are in that lease that they sign. That is our protection.
So those people that are out there saying, gosh, this is so vague and I don't understand.
So they can't have a bait and switch.
Right. You're saying, I feel good.
Absolutely.
I feel protected, and that what my understanding is of what is going to happen is going to happen. And if they change things, it can't happen.
Absolutely.
Right. And we'll
And
be
the
back to
seniors
making a different decision, but at least,
And the seniors will get punished over this.
you know,
That's the way I feel.
The seniors will get,
They'll be punished, you know. It's like, you know, they won't have a place to go to, so it's like taking it out on the seniors. And they won't have a place to go if they vote no.
right, right. There are giant consequences to voting no.
and voting no just sort of, as you said, kicks the can down the road, and it'll be another committee starting up with another idea and so forth. This is an idea that, let me just back up and say that I appreciate that every voter in Portsmouth has the right to view this and make their decision. If a voter doesn't want to give any property to any entity and wants to hold on to all town property, then by all means, that is their right to not give in a lease or for any program. But on the other hand, if you're looking to solve a problem and not have to spend tax dollars money on solving that problem, this is a very good plan. And it also, as Cynthia's pointed out, the Ann Hutchinson School, which is, I think, somewhat historic. I went to 1st through 4th grade there. That building will be preserved. Will it be market condos, or will it be something else? I don't know. There could be it could be a community center that a lot of people are supporting. But as far as providing senior housing, which we think is needed, and a senior center, which is really needed, and a new facility, this plan works for the senior center.
Well, I really appreciate you both coming on this show. I actually think your experience and your passion for what you do lends so much credibility, and the fact that you all started this journey and you were skeptical, and now you respect CCHC, you respect the process, and you feel good about going forward, and the entire board of the Portsmouth Multipurpose Senior Center is in support of this. That means the world to me, and I appreciate you coming on. So thank you for being my guest.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you
Yes.
for having us.
Of course, yes, and I hope you like
the new
the
mugs.
new mugs. Cheers, cheers, ladies. So, thank you very much. I appreciate you tuning in to this very important show. This is obviously a very big topic in our town. Please go vote. We'll see you next time.